O'Neill and the special guest host, Attorney Jerome Payne. Live TV talk on your digital device, on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. Download the SVP TV app right now. Check us out every Tuesday on Comcast Cable, Channel 17, 8:30 p.m. And we are live every Friday on Facebook Live, 6 o'clock in the evening. You've got a question, our attorneys have the answer. So let's talk law with Attorney Daryl O'Neill on the SVP TV network.
Welcome to Talking Law with Daryl O'Neill. I'm your host. I got my main man Jerome with me.
What's going on, Daryl?
Man, a long time. We've been off on a vacation, man. Took a time off.
It's been a while, man, but we're back now, though.
We're back.
And ready to go.
So, if you got, we live. So, if you got Facebook Live, shout out to the great state of Missouri.
Yes, right.
Shout out to Jerome's family, because we always got to give our family. Shout out to the great state of Missouri.
Yes, right.
Shout out to Jerome's family, because we always got to give our family love.
What's up?
Shout out to my family, got to give y'all love. Yeah. So, Jerome, starting a new subject today.
Sounds good, Daryl.
We're going to talk about, we hadn't talked about it in a while, but it's always back to the old mighty bankruptcy.
And Daryl, it's always has been like a safe harbor. Anyway, and the times are so troubling now, until we need to let people know that all is not lost. In fact, all can be gained by putting you back on the road to a fresh start. What do you think about that, Daryl?
I like that, but let me ask the question, Jerome.
Okay, sure.
Everything in the law is seeming to flex or flux, or it's uncertain. Is there any new legislation or anything coming down with bankruptcy?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because there are many, many things that are new in bankruptcy world. Because at one point, student loans were just absolutely a no-no. You could not discharge a student loan. But that's been flexed some. It's still strenuous to get it done, but you don't necessarily have to be burdened with a student loan like you used to. The next thing is that, as you said, and you said it so eloquently, about bankruptcy being maybe the only place where the law is somewhat firm, because it's a court of equity. And equity, you know how they say that equity follows the law, you know how they say it. But equity in a bankruptcy court allows some deviation from strict law, because it takes in consideration right and wrong, and it takes in consideration the balancing effect, something you cannot do in the law. The law is either A or B. But in equitable situations, it can be a blend. Because when the judges try to balance the equity, they try to give John a little bit, try to give Sue a little bit, and then give David a little bit too. So you could wind up with a ruling that affects everybody, and everybody maybe walk away with something. So yeah, that's why I like bankruptcy so much. And one other thing too. There used to be a strict red line on what unsecured creditors get, because there are three types: secured, unsecured, and priority. Used to be kind of a strict line that you had to have at least a 10% plan. But these new judges that we have, and these new trustees that we have determined that maybe the old way does not fit. So you could actually have a Chapter 13 plan with 0% in unsecured creditors.
Now, what does that mean when
That's
you say
amazing,
zero?
isn't it?
Yeah, 0%.
Okay, let's just talk a little bit. Okay, first of all, we can't because we're so anxious, to get this new show off the road, until we just jump right in and start talking about some things, and that's always dangerous, because people may not have any foundation. So we need some foundation. First of all, bankruptcy law goes back centuries, when we determined that there are some situations that are so dire and so devastating until there had to be some kind of safety net in place to keep people from falling off the deep end. Because remember back when the stock market crashed in the 40s, people were in fact leaping out of windows. because they decided that
they lost it all.
Right, everything was gone, so they would just dive out of the window. And so we decided we don't want that to happen. And also we saw back then that time where a whole families were out on the street with nothing but barrels on them because everything had been taken. So bankruptcy laws was designed to create a safety net for that. And so they also created something for everyone. There's a chapter 7, a chapter 11, a chapter 12, a chapter 13, and a chapter 9.
You got to go somewhere else.
And, and that's what, and you're right, and that's what most people were doing, were diving into chapter 7, into chapter 7.
Yeah.
And so in 2005, we got the new rules that came in and said, oh, hold it. Too many of you all are diving into chapter 7. So the credit card companies and creditors got together and they lobbied Congress in order to change the rules. So you can now only get a discharge once every 8 years, plus they created something called the means test to determine whether or not you'd have to pay back a portion of your bills.
And then the other thing,
Determine whether or not you'd have to pay back a portion of your bills.
and then the other thing that they did, Jerome, which I told you, I mean, when I was doing them, man, I knew all the rules.
Right.
The other thing is they started looking at your spouse's income and debt, and income more than debt.
That's exactly right.
And if there was some spousability, there was some, I don't know how they do that, but they looked at your spouse's income.
That's exactly right. And so what they did was, again, with the 2005 rules, they decided that not only should we look at the debtor, because that's what one becomes when they file a bankruptcy case. You become a debtor, and the people that you owe are creditors. So there's a course called debtor creditor. That's a better name than, I guess, the bankruptcy court, because maybe they wasn't getting a lot of people to, take bankruptcy, but they'll take debtor creditor.
Right.
So they decided that rather than looking at the debtor's income alone, that we should, in fact, look at the household income. And so that's another restriction.
And then that keeps, and if that combined income was something different in the means test,
absolutely,
then you couldn't file Chapter 7.
That's exactly right. You'll be forced into a Chapter 13. But even with that, they created some places where you can make certain deductions, deductions for secured creditors. You could deduct that. Charitable contributions. Also, you still can do a pretty nice size of tithes and offering. You can deduct up to 15% of your tithes and offering, and they unquestionable relief.
So you mean 15% of your income?
No, 15%, up to 15% of whatever. I mean, whatever
it is that you tithe.
Right, right.
Okay.
Remember, the scripture says something about 10%, but you can deduct up to 15% as tithes and offering.
Okay, that's a different thing.
Right,
So I was saying, I thought you said, if your income, so it don't really matter what your income.
That's exactly right.
It just matters what you did.
That is exactly right.
So if you deducted 15% for tithe and offering,
that's right.
That entire 15%, you can get an induction.
That's exactly right. It's unquestionable. You can put it in the category, and the trustees or nobody can even look at it. Up to 15%.
Okay.
Right.
Wow. And was that just tithes and offering, or that's charitable conduct?
Well, charitable contributions, and most of the time, it would be in the form of tithes and offering.
Well, but that's the thing. So when I looked at a Chapter 7, Jerome, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, you're the guy. When I looked at a Chapter 7, basically, even though people talk about Chapter 13 as being a fresh start, I looked at a Chapter 7 as a true, the epitome of what they call a fresh start.
I think you're absolutely correct. But because of the restrictions involved, we don't want people to think.
No, I'm just talking about.
Just because you can't go that route.
No, I'm just talking about, and that's the reason why when I was doing So I had my own set of issues.
Right.
And I think I told you this before.
Right.
I had my own set of issues. And my whole set of issues were that I thought that a lot of people, I thought the number of people or the chances of people completing a chapter 13 did not sit well.
There, you're also right on point too, and because of a number of reasons. Okay, so chapter 7 lasts 180 days, practically from start to finish.
Right.
So in 180 days, you can just about moonwalk.
Yeah.
Do 180 days.
Well, it's taking you that long to get all your stuff together.
Yeah, but chapter 13 lasts 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, 48 months, or 60 months. So life happens during that period of time. So you're right, maybe right at 50% of the people who follow chapter 13 will complete one.
And look, Jerome's saying 50%. You know, I think that I can't remember the name of this. Politico did a survey on this, and actually the number of people that the success ratio is even lower than 50.
And it's possible.
Yeah. But the point of that is, and this is how you got to look at it, Jerome. And again, I'm just a logical person.
No question, yeah.
And so what I thought about that's the reason why I didn't even consider when I was doing bankruptcy chapter 13. Because the whole reason why people are in problems is because they cannot stay on a consistent payment plan. Okay? People loan them money, right? People let them buy cars, or people let them move in apartments or houses or whatever the case may be, and say, hey, all you got to do is make a monthly payment of this amount of money. And what happens is something was always more important than making those payments. And that was what got them off track, and that's what got them in a need where they needed to file bankruptcy. Well, if that's the case of your life, how is that your life going to change by being in bankruptcy?
Well, that's another good question there. You on it tonight. But the reason why chapter 13s are so helpful is because those bad habits that a person had, their inability to have a structured type of financial situation, all of that can be constructed by a chapter 13 plan. And what that does is, when you come in to see the attorney, you and the attorney will develop a plan that helps you to understand how to budget. And so one of the things that we're missing in our school system is that they don't teach kids anything about finances at all.
It's not the school. We don't never want to go down because that ain't the school district position. That's your parents' position.
Well, also too. I mean, but
the
the parents have to have it so they can teach the children.
But Jerome, and that's why I got to back up here. All of that sounds good. I'm going to teach you this. I'm going to help you do this.
Right.
Okay. And even if a parent, there's people, if you give them, if they were accountants, they will be bad at finances. Because the point of the matter is, finances or paying finances or paying debt is, number one, is discipline.
Right.
Number two, it's willing to go without.
Right.
Because I have this responsibility. So
That's
I
right.
have to go without.
That's right.
Because of this responsibility.
That's right.
And it's to be selfless, to learn how, finances is all about being selfless. And the problem is, the people that are in that state, unfortunately, the vast majority of them, have not learned how to be and you're not going to teach that, Jerome, because here's what happens. 5 months into the plan, I got to go buy something, or I got to go do something, or I got to do this. And then I guarantee you, if you could pull up all the cases for the entire year, you'll see the number of cases where they have been dismissed because of failure to pay will be substantial. And my point is, we love to say and think and hope because they teach you, they do credit learning, credit education, credit training. They do all of these. That's what they did with Chapter 7. When they stopped at Chapter 7 and put you in Chapter 13.
That's right.
They put all these programs in place
Right.
to help you figure out how to get on track. But then they also put penalties. If you don't get on track and you fail, but then you file again, because you fail,
True.
that's a penalty.
True.
The first time you fail and you file again, your automatic stay, and correct me if I'm wrong, is only for 90 days.
30 days.
30 days.
30 days, only a 30-day stay.
For the second time.
Right. You have to file a motion to extend it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Within
the
30
third
days,
time that you file, there is no automatic
you don't
stay.
have one at all.
Yeah. So again, the penalties for not learning are substantial.
But remember too, Daryl. The thing is that we don't penalize people forever for a bad mistake. That's why you got an opportunity to file again. And that's why your stay, the only restriction with that is that you must file an extension within 30 days. And normally, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be granted. Because everyone understands that life happens. And so this is equitable. This is a program that's designed to help people to have things.
Yeah.
Our economy is based on goods being exchanged.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying?
No,
so we want
hear
the
you.
goods exchanged, and so built within this exchange is a safety net for the creditors. The
Yeah.
creditors have some cushion in there.
Well, okay, but they have
with the
more
interest
cushion.
rate.
Yeah, the creditors.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just tell you.
Okay.
When they changed the plan from 7s and 13, that wasn't for the benefit of the people that have bad spending habits, or that wasn't for the people that made mistakes in life. That was for the creditors.
Right. Right. That's right.
You know, and contrary to popular belief, Jerome, that process they put in place was to penalize the creditors.
No.
Oh no.
No, Daryl. No.
Jerome, let me clean this up, Jerome.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
Okay, so all right, well, walk with me. Walk with me.
Okay,
Let me show you why.
Okay, tell me why.
Let me walk. So, if you have made a mistake, right, and you got all this debt, and I'm bad at spending, and I'm just horrible at it, right, and I just do a bad job,
Right.
I no means test. Nobody cares about what my spouse makes, and none of that's considered in my process. You know, I do this chapter 7. 180 days is dismissed.
Right. Not discharge.
Discharge.
Right.
All debts that I owe, every responsibility that I have.
Not everything, Daryl. You got to be careful because
Okay.
the secured creditors can't be discharged.
The
It's
secured
only
credit-
the unsecured creditors.
Yeah, but the secured creditors will work with you.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And if they can't be discharged, you can give it back. They can't be discharged, but you can give it back.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can surrender. You can surrender.
You can surrender it. Start
Right.
all over again.
That's right. You can do that.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
It's truly a fresh start.
Right.
And if you screw it up after 80 days,
Right.
some people decide to give you credit again, and you get back the same place that you are.
Right.
Here's a difference in chapter 7 than chapter 13.
Okay.
If you have fallen back into that trap, and people do a lot, what they do is they say, you can't file chapter 7 again for X amount of years.
8 years.
So you can't file that again for 8 years.
Right.
That's the penalty for that screw up.
Right.
You can't file it again for 8 years. And when you file a chapter 7, what happens is the credit card people say, well, I'm going to give Jerome credit, but I'm going to give it at a higher rate.
That's right.
Because Jerome can't file chapter 7 again.
Right.
So I'm going to give him at a higher rate. But what Jerome can do, because here's the remedy for that screw up on the second time around, it's forcing you into chapter 13.
That's right. That's true.
And chapter 13, that person that got that loan or that debt at this 14% or 16 or 18%, chapter 13 will reset that interest rate.
That's exactly right.
So there is a provision to help.
That is right.
That's why I say that's a penalty, because chapter 7 was the norm and not the exception. They have now made chapter 7 the exception and chapter 13 the norm. And that only benefits the creditors because you got to pay them back. That's what chapter 13 says.
That's
you
right.
got to pay them back.
Right.
And chapter 7 says, hey, I screwed up. I was stuck on stupid. You gave me more debt than I can really afford. And I stupidly took it. I stupidly used it.
Right.
I stupidly got out of control. You know what? And since we were all stuck on stupid, we're going to get it discharged.
Right.
And it really starts you over. Whereas here, it says, well, you built this nonsense. You fix it. That's what chapter 13 says. You put
But I
yourself.
still don't see what is the penalty. So tell me about the penalty. Let's walk through the penalty.
Okay, the penalty is I don't get a true fresh start. A fresh start means chapter 7 says I get a do-over.
Well, look, what the fresh start is, it's innumerable. First of all, it's because of the bad habits that I had. I may have lost my privilege to drive a vehicle, and my license are revoked, or or dismissed somehow.
Okay.
And so I can use the chapter 13 to get that back on track by putting those fines, costs, and whatever it is into a plan,
Yeah.
so I can come out of it.
Now I got to tell you.
Okay.
Out of anything and everything with chapter 13, the only thing that is a great thing about chapter 13 is what you just said, because you can't discharge it in
Well,
chapter
let
7.
me tell you some more.
No, because that right there.
There's
is
some other good things in there too, but you got to know them there. You got to know what they're about.
Okay. So let's go through.
Okay,
Let's
let's
go
do
through.
that. So the next one is that, say for instance, you did have a child support obligation.
That's exactly right.
And so the child support obligation.
Those are all issues you can't discharge.
Has now
Yeah, you can't
accrued
discharge
some significant arrears, and they are garnishing your check for 25%. You can file a chapter 13 and get that a little more manageable.
Yeah, right.
Because even also too there, you can lose your driving privilege because of child support arrears. So the 13 will come in and prevent that from happening, and that's what. Or also your professional licenses too.
Yeah,
you can lose those as well.
Okay. So here's what you're saying,
Okay.
and I don't disagree, and I actually agree 110%.
Okay.
A chapter 13 is absolutely great for debts that you cannot discharge.
Non-dischargeable. Right.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
But what I'm talking about is dischargeable debts.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is unsecured.
Everything.
Which is unsecured.
And secured.
Right.
I can discharge secured.
Well, no, you can't discharge secured
I give
without
back.
giving it back.
That's what I'm saying. I give it back.
Without surrendering the
I
property.
surrender it.
Okay.
And I still get a fresh start.
That's right. That's
So,
true.
No, I can discharge
True
it.
that.
So I mean, when I give everything back.
True.
You can have all of it. But here's the problem, and most people don't realize this, and you know this better than anybody. If you file a chapter 7 and you owe this substantial amount of money on your house, and you got arrears, and you're behind, you got all this other stuff, they will work with you.
Sure.
Even though they don't have to.
They don't have to. Right.
They will work with you because they don't want to own that house.
That's right.
So they will work with. If you got all this debt on your car and you file a chapter 7, they will work with you.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to own your car.
That's right. That's true.
Okay. But they want to work with you because they want to keep your business. In chapter 13, again, what I don't get is, because I have all these other little ticky bills here that I never could afford anyway. You know, so I mean, I've seen scenarios where people are spending more money in bankruptcy than they were spending when they were outside of it.
Well, I don't recognize that there. Tell me what you mean by that, because you're only required to pay your secured debt monthly. The unsecured debt is never paid until the end. It's never paid until the end.
Yeah, but if you're unsecured, if your secured debt, so say for instance, if you have a secured debt,
Let's talk about it. You got a house note.
you got a house note.
Okay, let's just put some numbers. $200 a month.
No. I won't put that number. I won't put some big numbers
Okay,
on.
all right.
That's my problem.
Okay, go ahead.
So your house note
Is
was
what?
$1,000.
$1,000. Okay,
Your car note was $600.
that's $1,600.
And you had a child support or divorce matter, which is secured.
Right. No, it's priority.
Priority.
Yeah. Okay.
Which you can't get rid of it.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So, and that was $1,000 a month.
Okay. So
And
was
then
that
you had
$2,600?
$2,600.
I got you.
And now you got credit card debts that $5,000 or
Okay.
whatever.
So
Okay.
all right.
What you start off with, and if you could barely make this before, at a minimum, you got to pay $2,600.
No, let me tell you. No, you're wrong, because the only one that will survive a Chapter 13 filing is the house note. You cannot change the house note, but the car note, you can change that.
Potentially.
And no, not potentially. You can.
Okay.
Because what we do then is we look at the value, remember?
Okay.
We go to the NADA, the Blue Book, and see what the value of the vehicle is. That's all you got to pay back, provided that you've had it for more than 910 days.
Which is
That's the
only
only
almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years.
Yeah.
That's the only restriction on
Right.
that. But even then, the 24% interest that you talked about, that goes
That
away.
goes down.
That goes down to maybe 9.5 or
Right.
10.
Right.
So you can change that.
Those, because that's one.
And the child support.
No,
because
no,
you
how
were
you
paying.
change that?
Well, you were paying the arrears, but if you're paying a monthly amount, if you've been ordered to pay an ongoing amount, you can't change that.
Correct.
But most people don't have the problem with the ongoing because it's coming out of their check. It's the arrears.
Yeah, but the arrears you still got to pay too.
You can, but you don't have to pay it at the rate that they tried to set it at.
Yeah, but
You follow me?
yeah, but if your regular monthly payment was $8,000,
Right.
can't change
That's
that.
the ongoing.
Your mortgage payment was $1,000. That's ongoing.
That's right. That's 2,000.
That's $2,000.
Right.
And then the only thing that we're going to get a knockoff on is my car payment.
Because the car note was $600, but now it's only $450.
So $450. So I save $150.
That's exactly right. $150 for some people. There is almost a lifeline.
It's
Because at least now you can buy gas where you couldn't buy gas. At least now you can have lunch at work because you got an extra $150 in your pocket. And the next thing is too, like when I remember most of these debts are being collected not by the original owner of the debt. These are debt buyers.
well, that's the credit card stuff.
Yeah, that's
no,
what I'm
I'm
saying.
not talking about those people.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'm talking about the ones, and that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's those big ones.
Right.
You know, your child support that will continue to be $1,000.
That's
a month.
right.
It's your
House note.
House note. That's
Can't
going to
change
continue
it.
to change
Right.
that. And so we get something on your car note, right?
That's right.
That knocks that down.
That's right.
But then you got $150 left. Bankruptcy court is still going to look to divvy up your money, even on the arrears and everything else that you owe, with that $150. You don't just get to keep that $150.
No, well, not necessarily. Because look, what we do is when we're creating your plan, we are probably inflating the amounts for your food. Remember,
I don't do inflation.
on your schedule
yeah.
I and your schedule J.
Right.
So because we use the IRS guidelines, the IRS has a list of things that they allow you to deduct, and that's the guidelines we use.
Right.
So based on that, you could still come up with a substantial savings.
No, not substantial. Because we only got $150 left.
Well, that's because we didn't use it to the fullest. That's because of the, if you use the IRS guidelines, you would have more than $150.
I don't know how.
Because the IRS allows an individual to spend $600
Yeah.
for food and groceries.
Yeah, but
you
it's
may
not
not
there.
feel.
Yeah, it's not there though. Because all I got is $2,600. That's
Well,
why I'm in bankruptcy.
No.
'Cause I got $2,600.
No. You said that's what the bill used to.
That's all I got.
We never talked about how much they earn.
I only earn. That's why I'm in bankruptcy. I have maxed myself out. I owe $2,600 a month.
Right, but how much do you make?
$2,600 a month.
How much do you make?
$2,600. That's why I got to go to bankruptcy. I need to be in 7 and not 13.
But think about it too. If you only make $2,600, then how did you go about getting this
I don't know
vehicle
what
like that?
that's what they did.
They gave it to you.
Yeah, that's what they did. That's the problem with debtors. I mean, with creditors. They're going to give you whatever you
What they
want.
want.
Yeah. If you want to buy, I'll sell it.
Right.
Like you said, goods in exchange, we want to keep that. Oh, yeah. Hey, y'all. Thank you for watching the show. We'll be back next week. We're going to finish this topic.
Finish this
Yeah,
up,
we're going to
yeah.
have some more fun with it.
All right.
All right, thank you. We'll see you back.